If ye seek, ye shall find. Because no mystery is closed to an open mind. We keep you up to date so you can decide your own fate. Welcome to Maxim Axiom Radio. Hello everyone, and welcome to Maxim Axiom Radio. I'm your host, Roger Sylver, and I have been working very hard behind the scenes since when we did our last radio show with Mary Rodwell, whom of which will be on the show in the future, very soon to come. But on today's show, we have the esteemed and lovely Laura Eisenhower. Many of you listening are already familiar with Laura and her work, but for those who are not, she is an intuitive astrologist, global alchemist, cosmic mythologist, and is the great-granddaughter of former President Dwight Eisenhower. And more than that, she is a personal friend and a soul sister of mine. And she, along with many others down here, including myself, are on a profound mission to reveal our true origins connected with the Magdalene and Gaia-Sophia energies of love and wisdom as they work to liberate everyone from the military-industrial complex, the Archonic systems, and false power structures, as these forces connect many dots that are coming into our awareness now more than ever as our solar system aligns with the Galactic plane. So please join me in welcoming Laura. Laura, it's awesome to have you here today on this show because it's been a while since we last chatted. So please, fill us in on what's been transpiring in your life as of late, and we can go from there because I know we both have a lot to say today.
Well, it's great to be here, and it's always wonderful to connect with you. And we've been friends for quite some time, pretty much since the beginning of Facebook, or at least when I got on Facebook.
Right.
And you've always been really supportive, and so I really appreciate you. And
right on.
Yeah. So let's see. I mean, it has been a little while. I've been doing events and just really trying to connect as many dots as possible, which is always what my process has been about. The global alchemist part is where there's a lot more action behind the words, on my part,
right.
Just lifetimes after lifetimes in this particular incarnation starting, starting from the time I was young. It's just, it's like I knew something was flipping around, like, and that we have the ability to bring balance of the masculine and feminine back. And there's something about the four elements and the stargates and the Venus transits that kept bringing my attention to, alchemy. And so in this last year, there's been just a lot of validation and clarity. The Venus transits have created a sacred geometry, in the form of a rose, and it forms a perfect pentagram in the sky, the orbit. And I've known this, since way before 2012, but there's just more and more, coming in that really hits the point home of, what our heart energy is doing in this experience and how it can change the nature of our reality. It helps us to, move beyond the veil, and, it's beyond love. It's just, it's universal love, and it's consolidating all the lessons and experiences and being willing to go into the dark night of the soul and get the initiations we need. And in a culture like we're in, that likes to take advantage of our vulnerability and our confusion about these initiations. I'm just really glad to have a voice to sort of, encourage people to move into that process and, to make it real clear too, that I do readings and sessions and I can, assist. I've been there, that's been really like my whole life. And I think, when all of us are just ready to go into that zone of going into our core truth, and embracing our darkness and our power, we each do our part. And so, I feel an urgency in my nervous system all the time to get this sort of information out there. And then, I like to see where the common threads are between the mythologies and the exopolitics and then our galactic history, to help, awaken cellular memory, not to create fixed belief systems, but to really, activate something that exists within each individual, and then they can, work on making sense out of the rest. And so the last couple of years, have been great opportunities. I started something recently with my friend Madison Truesdell called the Justice Twins. She came and visited me, and we were hanging out, and it was like all these different action plans. We were discussing. It's like, oh my God, we're coming up with the same stuff, or we have the same vision, or she would be in complete agreement to something that I had been thinking about for a long time. So we're sort of teaming up, and this is a big year of collaborations. My relationship with Dr. Dream has been sort of on again, off again. Now it's on, and I won't be seeing him much, but both of us, are really doing some amazing things, staying very merged, as, there's less physical time together,
Right.
but our love is strong, and it brought us back. And now I'm just really looking forward to just the unification, and just coming up with great ideas with different individuals, and collaborating with him when possible. So that's pretty much what it's been, and what it is now.
That's cool. That's cool. So you recently, well, you know what? I wanted to bring up cellular memory really quick, because in my feed on Fedbook, because that's what I choose to call it, right? Because it is Fedbook there. In my feed, I had a discussion with some folks about cellular memory, and how now scientists, quote unquote, have been able to surmise that our ancestors contribute to our, not only our genetic coding, but what they have experienced also trickles down the generational lines. But I even went so far as to adding that, well, so do our souls. Our souls are eternal, right? So our souls are amassing some great experiences from different planets, different multiverses, different, you name it, genders, species, and we bring that back with us, right, when we incarnate, because it's a symbiotic relationship between the body and the soul slash spirit. And the junk DNA, of course, is anything but junk DNA, as we know. And I really feel that that cellular memory also works in conjunction with whomever is inhabiting their meat and bone sack, if you will. How do you feel about that?
Wait, say that last part, just about the meat and bone sack.
Yeah, well, it's the soul basically comes in and teams up with the cellular memory of the body it's going to incarnate. Therefore, the soul can bring with it, such as, if they're musicians, artists, mediums in past lives, they can bring those factors back with them into these bodies, because the cellular memory allows us to do that, since it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a very interesting topic, and I think, it's a big question mark, some of these mysteries for people. We have our DNA, on a physical level, and then we also have ethereal DNA. When we inhabit a body, and the DNA and the soul matrix, work with that work with that body, it's sort of like an osmosis as the soul enters that physical form, and kind of brings those stories in, while the physical vessel that holds the DNA that links to the ethereal DNA and the junk DNA, is a part of that, even though it's recreated and it's rebirthed and it's a new physical form. And it's a cool topic, because I feel like I don't really have past lives. It's all just one big life, and
Right, yeah.
there's just been a doorway between,
Yep.
but it's almost like it's been the same mission, and we all wear like a lot of different hats to get the full-on experience, so that in this window period we can make informed choices based on where we've been and who we've been and what we've done. And there's something very interesting in the astro chart called the North and South Node, which connects to the deeper soul journey and the stuff that kind of bleeds over from past lives. And the North and South Node are considered lunar, which is connected to the moon. And so, it's through, emotionality and our psychic body in the waters that we hold imprints, whether they're traumas or, gifts and abilities that we're recovering and bringing to the next level. Beethoven picking up the piano, for example, or, somebody that, just has an innate talent that they recognize at a young age. And then there's the unconscious patternings that might not come from our immediate environment, but we bring in a patterning that's somewhat unconscious, based on, these past lives. And the South Node, we live out for the first, maybe 30, 40 years of our life. And it shows us the patterning that we need to move away from. And it also reminds us of our gifts and abilities. So when we launch to the North Node, which is our destiny, it helps to be an antidote to the challenges and ruts we're trying to let go of. And it's also where we can take our gifts and abilities to the next level. And it's also how we, upgrade our DNA and take that leap. And if we don't take that leap, we stagnate or we digress. And so that's what I focus on when I do chart readings is, to help a person, move down the trail of their deeper journey, which is very difficult at times to get in touch with because of the school systems and our parents and the way society is structured. The minute we're born, right away, these things are being less. It's hard to capture all this, and plus we have amnesia, and it takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of life experiences and assessing maybe why certain things are unfolding or taking place, that we start to hear that inner voice and start to understand, that we might be called to something that isn't part of, the original plan we laid out. And that's when we start to make drastic changes. If we ignore that voice, and we miss certain important events that have to do with our alignment with the galactic plane and the Pluto-Uranus transits that we're getting activated with this week, our physical body misses the opportunity to, connect in with, consciousness and merge the two together so that one's not separate than the other or operating at a greater speed. Consciousness will always move quicker, but if there's a disconnect or one's too ungrounded and it doesn't get anchored in the physical, it's like another cycle has to happen in order to retrieve that possibility. And this window period is giving us ample cycles to work with, but there's going to be a certain point where it's not going to be that easy. And, and I don't want to project any sort of belief system on it. It's just the nature of the geophysics of the planet and how it relates to the 2012 to 2017 window period are really crucial, for us to get the necessary awakenings and upgrades that we need to be able to move our physical body through. And it's through the cellular memory and a lot of our awakening that we, can understand more the story and not worry about sort of the biology of it all. Because when we see things in archetype and mythology, our soul feels a certain mythology or a certain familiarity, and we feel more empowered to be the scriptwriter of the rest of our journey. Sometimes it's difficult to understand it in terms of the science of it all. It's the difference between smelling a flower and observing its beauty to, understanding all the okay, I'm not going to say that word.
Intricities?
All the intricate details.
There you go.
Intricacies. Yeah, all the intricate details, of here's the stigma and the manta, the biology of it all, and that's very heady. And so we can really, get back to simplicity and know that the biology and the complexities are operating in response to this work that we're doing. It's the best and most simple way I would say for people is to work with the tarot deck, to understand the 78 different aspects that we all have in common, but in different recipes, and then understand that Fool card and that Zero card that brings us into like the totality of all of it, and understanding that archetype, is the magical child. And, so it's just amazing, how we're progressing along the way. And so I've got certain tools that I use to help a person, understand it and to awaken, past lives, and also to, separate us a little bit from the ones that feed us, negating information, that keeps us in a rut, maybe a trauma we haven't healed from or a fracture.
Right, exactly. Now, the traumas or the fractures I would like to speak about too, because this is also a double-edged sword, is it not? Because not only are you bringing in these, wonderful, badass abilities from a lifetime's past, but you're also bringing in bleed-throughs of fears and people not knowing why they have the fear of heights or the fear of fire. They could have dropped from a cliff or been thrown over a cliff, or they could have been burnt at the stake for being accused of being a hedge witch. I'm still trying to figure out the clown thing for a lot of people out there, but it doesn't help when they're making horror movies out there about, killer clowns from outer space, or a person's dad turning into a demonoid clown going around and eating children, all right? But there are certain things that people need to get over that they've brought with them to this lifetime. I'm really focusing on those who should be standing up, and many more folks who have come here with missions like ourselves are being sidetracked and pulled down into the quagmire of trying to overcome their fears and their complications in order to meet who and what they're supposed to be right here in the now. And I can tell you there's a lot of them, but we really need their assistance right now, and they really have one hell of a learning curve hitting them, staring them in the face. How would you suggest that they start with all of that so they can just kind of leap forward into where they should be right now? Because, do we really have the quote-unquote time, chronological time for them to understand all this, get past it all, and be where they should? Is it all divine timing, or are there a certain amount of people that really need to start picking up on this to assist in that tipping point, that counterbalance to even things out? Because right now things are getting you can tell that the forces are losing their noggins over this. They're going crazy with the outlandish crap that they're coming out with in every country. In America, here in England, they know that their time is coming to an end, but it feels like they are doing their best to lay the smackdown on everybody to keep them from moving freely, to doing anything freely. What say you about all of that, I guess, in a nutshell? I know I kind of covered a lot there, but hopefully you're able to follow me.
People, just people, I guess, being, prepared and able to do what they need to do in order to make the changes that are necessary to make it through. I mean, it seems like the gist of what you're saying, right?
Right, pretty much, yeah.
It is divine timing, but it's also mixed with free will choices. There's things that are going to be unfolding, synchronicities and magical things that will assist us in being on the right path. But if we have blinders on, if we are lost in the negative ego, we can be very stubborn and not read the signs and completely bypass what's good. Now, some people manifest crises and all sorts of disasters to help reroute them, but sometimes it takes years to understand and make sense out of why a certain event happened, especially if the ego is operating, fighting against it, saying, why me? Or, falling into some sort of victimhood or blaming something outside the self. We have to really take self-responsibility and pay attention to understand what the messages are. We need to do that with the physical body when we get physical symptoms. If we just drug ourselves and we don't understand the root of it, we're never going to heal, and it just, it's like we're chasing our tail and we're never getting, to the point. Just reading charts, everybody is at a different place, but the ego is sort of like the doorway in. How stubborn is it? Is it a mask? Is it hiding the true self, or is it a good match? And does it have a similar resonance with what the true essence of that soul is? Basically the ascendant or the first house is like the front of a house. You walk up to it, you sort of get your first impression, and it's either drastically different on the inside or it's not. And there could be like boards, sealing up the windows, saying nobody is allowed in, or, it might be outside sitting, it might be something open, and, there might be a yard with chairs and a table, and, the person might put on events all the time. And, so everybody's got a different persona, but, that's the outer shell, and then there's the inner goodies. And if the two are in sync, it's easy for us to progress on our path. If the two aren't in sync, it almost creates two timelines and two possibilities. One is that stubbornness of the negative ego, and the other one is, really being able to listen and see another perspective. And, life is always trying to reroute us and help us get back on track. But society takes advantage of this and sort of brings us further away from the goal, by creating sort of a projection that, it's sort of doom and gloom, and, that sort of hospital and medicate, it just stunts people in maybe feeling like the adversity is a real issue when it's a great wake-up call. And I think a lot of people in hindsight look back and say, oh my God, I'm so glad that happened. It gave me everything I needed and it woke me up. But like I said, it can take years and years and years. So the consciousness of the individual matters. The ego nature, matters. And how one is able to assess the signs and the signals. And it's very easy, to keep looping on patterns that don't help a person move forward. But, certain people really signed up for not being able to get away with staying asleep. And that signature is in their chart, and it's inevitable that they're going to get to where they need to be. Other people, there's a certain soul capturing and I'm not saying it's permanent, but there's sort of an unconsciousness that's operating that, it's very much about how the archons sort of throw a person back into incarnation without that soul really having a chance to be conscious and make agreements and, make contracts or declare, I'm going to be a planetary healer or really wake up this next lifetime. Some people just get sent back in and they're just, and that's where there's sort of that enslavement where they're just sort of inside the corral of the artificial matrix. But there's so many that exist outside of it. They might have a little bit of amnesia at first, but they're the ones that are here to help open that doorway for people to walk out of that matrix. And, it is a timing thing. But like I said, if there's blinders on and if our free will choices keep us, looking at all the things to reinforce, our stuckness, because our creative energy has instruction codes that aren't true to who we are, but they're based on programmings or, projections from others or expectations from something outside of us. It's very, difficult to get, to get those breakthroughs. But like I said, there's safety measures, there's spirit guides, there's things that, we make sure are set up, but not everybody, does that. And, so it might take them longer to sort of, evolve themselves out of sort of the fog, but that's what all these numerous incarnations have been about. So, we're going to see like a tipping point and a ripple effect. And even those that haven't been in the process of awakening could easily get hit with it and radically shift, you know?
Right, exactly. Getting back to the weird, outlandish crap that the other side, the opposing force, is trying to put out there now, such as in 2013, they gave a medically scientific name to those of us who oppose false authority, right? And then called it a mental illness and or dis-ease. They've done the same thing with people who are creative and always been creative, musicians, artists, and things of that sort. They're calling it mental disorders. Same thing with eating healthy. They're placing labels on that, and it's becoming so just obvious to me that they are slipping and grasping for goddamn straws that it really stumps me that your typical muggle, as John Storm and I call them, can't pick up on that. It's so maddening, Whew. And then, in my particular situation with being Aries, I'm a double Aries and triple Sag, right? But I've got an Earth Grand Trine. Oh boy. But we just came out of, what was it? It was Pluto square Uranus.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
Pluto and Capricorn square Uranus and Aries.
Yeah. What is that about?
We're still dealing, well, I mean, that's the Pluto-Uranus squares, and this next week is going to be a huge activation and the last activation of it. And what is it about? Okay, Uranus is about shock and upheaval that lead to great epiphanies and insights and connects us with the universal truth, helps us to get out of the box, helps us to be authentic and genuine. And it's sort of the prerequisite to unity consciousness, because it is about unity, but it's also about individuality. And so I think people get stuck with, what does oneness mean and what is individuality? And then they get stuck on the archetypes of what Lucifer wanted, what Enki and Enlil wanted. And really, Uranus is the whole package. And I think if we could step out of some of the stories, which is why I study mythology, to know which scripts are better left, maybe on the writing board, and which ones we could rewrite better.
Yeah. Because
we are these archetypes. We inherited these patterns. It's up to us to write them differently and affect change with them. And so Uranus is about these breakthroughs, but it's through individuality that we're and self-awareness and being genuine and authentic that we're able to unify. Because if we unify, with the programmings and conditionings that we have adopted along the way, or we're in that matrix thinking, we're not going to really unify. We're going to be fighting. We're going to be competitive. We're going to be lost in the stuff that they've already infected us with. That's why it requires a lot of inner work before we unify, and why we've had so many dark night of the soul journeys, preparing us for what this ascension window period is. The dark night of the soul is the Pluto. Uranus is sort of like the shock, kind of like maybe reading something that blows your mind, or having an abrupt ending to a job or a relationship, but it's always to help get one to the next level. And it can be also injury and accident. And that's when we were talking about, in hindsight, feeling grateful for the experience. That's how Uranus is. With Pluto, it's like going into, the death cycle and sometimes feeling even suicidal. But if you ride it out and understand that, it's assisting in purging and clearing and, rebirthing and, transforming, it's amazing. So when they're squared aspect, it means that they're in friction with each other. So simultaneously, we're going through some of these deeper journeys, while at the same time, we're being very stimulated in our nervous system to see life through a different lens. And once we get a grip on it, though, it just because it's challenging doesn't mean, it's a negative thing. It's the challenge is to give us the urgency to make the changes that are necessary. And that is what we're needing to do across the board in this human experience. Lots of people were born with them in harmony with each other. There's a certain gap of, certain people that have been born with them actually making a positive aspect to each other. And I think that's my kids' generation, because I know my kids have that. And then a lot of people like our age have them conjunct each other in their natal chart. So a lot of us are already comfortable with the energies, or are like we embody some sort of ability to handle it.
Right.
And sometimes that shatters a lot of the matrix stuff that we've adopted and brings us back to our core. But for other people, they might need the guidance of people that have them well placed in their chart. And that's why, there is leadership, and people might need that assistance for a while. And then when they get through, the difficulty, then they're good to go, and maybe they don't need as much assistance. The thing is, we're all trying to, create other leaders, not dependency. That's what governments do, because that's
Right.
controlling.
The trick is when they wake up and realize that they are an individual and they are the true authority, of themselves, then they must understand that it's all about sentient self-responsibility is what I've been calling it. And that they definitely have a role to play in coming together with the collective of individuals to push forth and turn this place into what it was meant to be from the beginning. Yeah?
Right. Yes. Yes. And, this is what we're restoring, and there are higher earth energies and higher, dimensional earths, but we used to be on that, and it sank into this lower harmonic universe. And so to bridge souls back to it is to, bridge souls that are not contaminated or infiltrated or dealing with a lot of, digressive, genetic codings that cause a person to sort of go into reversals. Now we can heal it with our consciousness. We can heal it with, doing a lot of the inner work. We can restore DNA, but, we can't really get to the next level without, stepping up. Similar to, if we expect our bodies to keep us healthy, but we keep trashing it, that's a huge expectation on the physical body. I mean, if we're going to, heal, we have to take the first step and say, hey, I'm going to eat better. I'm going to get more sleep. I'm going to change my belief systems and lifestyle. Then our immune system is like, cool. I'm going to work for you. Thanks for stepping up. And same thing in life. If we devote ourselves to the organic ascension path, if we devote ourselves to sacred union and unification, everything else picks up the rest of the slack and kind of keeps us on track. As long as, we do our part, we're going to be matched with something extraordinary that has, the magic of something like the immune system that can make a rash disappear in like 2 seconds, or, turn cancer around or reverse, diseases that seem incurable. And there's certain things that we just need to understand based on the frequency wave or pattern that comes from something that digressed or got damaged, which homeopathy understands because it matches it in order to stimulate, a response, so that the body can fight it. It matches, the problem and to create the antidote, to turn the body's, mechanisms on. And, so we have to sort of look at that when we see chemtrails or things that frustrate us. Let that be a little bit of a homeopathic reminder of, what it is we're really waking up to. We have to let the weapons and the assaults be a part of our awakening, not a part of us slipping into lower density thinking and allowing and enabling it to have power over us or succeed in giving us a doom or gloom perspective. Like when I look at chemtrails, I'm like, thank you for reminding me of how powerful I am and how much I'm not going to be affected by it and how much I'm going to help humanity rise above this.
Right.
And that's just a reminder to me, and it keeps me empowered, because the old way, when I looked at it, it really brought me down. And, and I think we all have to go through a process to get to the other side, but that's what Uranus and Pluto transits are all about, certain epiphanies, but we're going to get shaken up where we need to get shaken up. So that we can, have those, insights. And for some people, it's devastating, because so much needs to change. For others, it's like, everything sort of lines up and maybe things just begin to make sense. And one can, with grace and ease, make the life adjustments that they might have been pondering for years and feel more encouragement to do, push the envelope a little bit in their life.
Right. Yeah, precisely. I would like to get into a little bit of the current patriarchy, yes, that has dominated for the last who knows how many years, right? Where the bad side of the divine male, if you will, the negative side, has done nothing but to control and dominate the masses. While now we have the divine female. I'm seeing female warriors like yourself, a friend of mine in South Dakota, Gwen Caldwell. These women are coming forth, right, to assist in bringing the divine feminine into being. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine a few days ago about how it's not about the divine feminine coming in and taking things over, but rather the rise once again of the divine female to work alongside the divine male, to bring about the wholeness, the fullness of what our lives and this planet should be vibrationally. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, balance is crucial. Anybody who misunderstands, any of this sort of stuff, needs to understand. I mean, when it's called like new agey, or the projections, are there, it's kind of a bummer. But then at the same time, there's a lot of teachings that sort of don't hit the point home, and sort of get lost in some of the programmings and deceptions that, new age teachings are subject to. I mean, there's false ascended masters, there's false telepathy.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to be really careful about that. So discernment's really important. That's why I embrace people like sort of being insulting towards me, as long as they don't have to use so many derogatory words. It's like, good, you're discerning. That's a healthy thing. But my God, it's so difficult because it's like you're discerning. I mean, I'm not trying to put myself like, I'm all of the truth and I have all the answers.
Right.
But it's a bummer because I don't have, a hidden agenda, and I am coming from my heart, and I do have lifetimes and lifetimes of experience to be able to share these sort of messages. And, and so being a new ager, I'm being told, or, just all this goddessy stuff like that I sort of get trashed for. And it's, And I have put a lot of emphasis on the divine feminine. I started the Return of the Divine Feminine page, and there's over 300,000 people, and it's gotten a lot of attention. But I've never, ever, made it not about the balance. I mean, even the side summary says, there's the feminine within all of us, both men and women.
Right.
We need to empower this so that we, are not so submissive, or we're not so much in victim consciousness or allowing the exile to continue. We need to really understand that we need to rebirth ourselves out of, the captivity of, being under, the divine feminine was never under the rulership of the false king of tyranny archetype or Hades or anything like that. But we need to get out of sort of a certain frame of mind that just sort of, keeps the patriarchy alive, or keeps us sort of like a victim to it, or makes it, all about the battle, the same sort of battle that we see people, engage in with the Illuminati. we have to understand the Illuminati is very much a reflection of our own negative ego, operating outside of us and reminding us that if we give our power away and we buy into the programming, we are functioning from our negative ego and we're keeping their system alive. Same sort of thing goes for, the way we work with the masculine and feminine energies. If we, make it a battle with patriarchy and it's all about, movements and feminism, to get our rights. Well, yeah, there's certain stages of that were crucial and necessary.
Right.
But this is also where we can get steered in the wrong direction where, it's about women becoming men and it's about them fighting in wars and it's about, sort of an equality that doesn't make much sense.
Right.
I mean, because there's certain things that aren't equal, but I guess they could be equal. I mean, we're built differently. Women birth babies and, men can build their muscles and be like on a physiological level different than the way the feminine is built, and it does matter. Hormones play a huge factor and also the soul, that some people might be in a female body and feel more masculine. I mean, that all of that, can be taken into consideration, but true balance is understanding the dance instead of the power struggle, not so much about the competition, but more about, engaging with the Christ consciousness, understanding that the original template, the Trinity, is masculine, feminine in balance, and that balance births the magical child, the miracle energy, that fool energy, helping us to connect to the, the 0 point, which helps us to graduate from the wheel of necessity, which is the zodiac. It's like, okay, we've played out duality. We've had all these different experiences as different archetypal energies. Now it's about wholeness and balance so that we can move on. And the wholeness and balance comes from the, how we balance that relationship within us. And then miracles really start happening and life changes. If those energies aren't in balance, or we're leaning, more to one side than the other, or we're fighting and battling, I'm not saying that the fight and battle is negative ego, but if there's any sort of imbalance and we're trying to fight to restore it, it might create a new form of imbalance, which is something to watch out for, because when the masculine and feminine aren't in balance, it births, negative ego, either too much arrogance and self-righteousness or too much insecurity and fear and unworthiness. And it goes, it's going to be polarized from one extreme to the other without finding that middle point. And the middle point is where ego, is in service to our higher self and our balance of the masculine and feminine, which is deep down within us. We just have to keep digging and digging and digging. And so, nothing can take over the other. The whole point is balance. And I just see it like, DNA, the spiraling energies, like this dance, how it connects to the Kundalini, how it connects to, sacred sexuality and how that links to creativity and spirituality, and the right and left brain coming back together and heaven and earth coming back together. And, that's what it really represents. And, we have to look at it on a multidimensional level, not just, looking at it on the world stage where, oh, the first female president, or, oh, women can go to war, or, oh, it's like, okay, great. But like, are we losing ourselves, fighting to be just like men? Or can we understand that, the divine feminine is deeply connected with nature, with the elements, with Gaia, with birthing, with creating, with nurturing. And can we honor that role before, we send her off to war, and like at least put that in the spotlight? And then, all those things are included. You should be able to do whatever you want. And that's, something that should have been there from the get-go. But we don't want to think that that's all there is. Understanding the divine masculine and feminine is, really going much, much, much deeper than what we see playing out on the world stage. And, the end of patriarchy doesn't come with Hillary Clinton running for president and women fighting in war. It comes from female leadership that has to do with us learning about nature, the cycles of nature, us learning about the cosmos, and our connection to universal laws and cosmic laws, our connection with spirit. And the human race is really lost unless we allow these other forces to, work through us. And we're really here to be a voice for it. And as we're a voice for it, it advances our physical vessel so that we can shift into another experience. And I just feel like everything on the world stage, inspires us to think that there are changes happening, but those changes, end up looping us back into the initial issue, which is that we're not functioning at our core depth. all the things are important, that we're seeing on the world stage. Like I said, if women want to do this, they should have the right to do whatever they want. But we need to understand that there's a lot more empowerment going on. The negative ego male needs to understand Christ consciousness. The feminine that's fighting and battling or feeling like a victim or feeling exiled, also needs to, blossom and not just, be competitive with the male. And when we can all dance together and unify and understand our roles, but understand, where the equality and balance works, and understand our differences enough to be able to hold space for each other so that we can support each other's roles in the world, I think then we're in good shape.
Right on. I was going to ask you if you could elaborate more on the positive aspects of the patriarchal and the matriarchal coming together, but what they could be rather than what people feel they are because of where they are in their awakening and or life experiences. But I think you're hitting the nail on the head there totally. As far as the scales tipping and things of that sort, we can discern judgment with wisdom, we can discern for ourselves just how crazy things are getting and how blatantly in your face a lot of this stuff is, like, creativity, eating healthy, and, going against the grain, against false authority is also a mental illness. Well, you start seeing them putting this crap out there, and you start realizing they're grasping for straws to hang on to the control that is no longer theirs unless people decide to give it to them. But I feel that that time is finished. They're going to take as many down with them as possible, such as the Vatican, for instance, coming out and saying, you know what, folks, it's really not a good idea if you decide to take up having a one-on-one relationship between you and the creator, but of course our creator being different than theirs, yeah. But don't go it alone. You need us. You need a mediator in between you and that creative source. Don't go it alone. It's very dangerous. All this is gobbledygook, and they don't want people to understand just how powerful they truly are. What do you have to say about that, and what can people do to start empowering themselves? How can they start taking their power back quite quickly, as a matter of fact, from these institutions such as, religion, politics, all of it? How do they start taking back their power and doing something good to benefit themselves and, basically the betterment of all?
Good stuff. I just got this image of, and this is metaphorical, and I would never do it. Okay. But I feel like somebody needs to slap them upside the head a little bit, because it's like,
hey, you know what? I can. I will. I will.
And I say that, from sort of a tough love, place of, I don't know what place. The thing is, when you're dealing with this much pedophilia, and you've got, naked people climbing out of windows of the Buckingham, and I know that the Vatican is not, on a religious level, there's a distinction, but there's still a connection, of course.
Oh, totally.
All the different stories. There's been nothing but, cases and cases of pedophilia going on in the Vatican for so long. Stories about the Pope, things where he's being held accountable and then he resigns, and everybody's just thinking this is okay and normal. And millions show up at the Vatican acting like this is the spiritual, kingdom of the earth, and this is our salvation, and this is where we get the most spiritual teachings and understanding. And people know this criminal activity is going on. It's like, stop drinking the water, people. Like, I don't know what possesses people to think that any of this is okay, if they're just in absolute denial, or they just think that, they're just being targeted and attacked to look bad. I think what people really need to do is just, if they're ignoring that, that's just a whole nother context. Now, when it comes to somebody who just maybe has filtered it out and is struggling maybe with a different religion and not the Vatican, or just what it means to relate to God, goddess in a way that doesn't feel empowering, but in a way that's about worship and about, dogma and teachings and just the religious structure. The way to really get empowered, there has to be something that manifests to sort of like push a person into maybe thinking differently, maybe a different perspective, because, we're dealing with a lot of stubbornness. I mean, this is like huge mind control going on and brainwashing, taking like, our feeling of unworthiness and guilt and shame and using it against us and propping these characters up and having Jesus on the cross. So we feel guilty, not guilty, but I mean, so we feel so small that somebody was willing to die for our sins. Now, every time we see Jesus on the cross, suffering like that, it does something to us where we have to like make up for that, and justify it with like, if he did that, then we better, worship, and we better redeem ourselves and free ourselves of sin. And that's how the story was set up. Religion has been a manipulation from the get-go. I mean, the stories didn't play out in the way that we're seeing them. And religion basically is rooted in Illuminati type stuff and occultist type stuff, and creating this sort of outer facade to absolutely confuse people. There's crucifixion implants and false memories that link us to the life of Christ even. So anyway, those people aren't going to get to that level. That's like way down the road if they can even hear it. But a way to become empowered is to really understand that these deities, or people like, Christ and Magdalene, or Jesus and Magdalene, came here to be examples. They came here to remind us of who we are. We live on a soul level the story that they represent, the return of the divine masculine and feminine, Magdalene, overcoming the grief and sadness of what this world has come to. And, Christ going, in this death resurrection process, similar to going into the dark night of the soul. The goddess does that too when she goes into the underworld. Many stories in mythology are very much about dying and being reborn. And so the death resurrection scenario is both connected to the god and goddess. So we have to understand that we're presented with this all the time, where we need to die and be reborn, where we can learn from them, how to kind of fall into the depths of ourselves and come back, on a path of ascension. And, for us to be empowered is to understand that they tell the story of what's happening within our soul. And when the stories are externalized and we see it outside of ourselves, it's not what their teachings were. And, I mean, how can a person become empowered? Spend some time in nature, question things, have an open mind to the things that have been considered taboo, like astrology and tarot. Understand that, like technologies and like tools, it's the person behind it that's the problem. It's not the actual tools. I mean, Catholicism uses an altar. It has like, this whole ritual of turning bread into, or the body into bread. And that's very ritualistic. So why such an issue with things like tarot and, astrology? It's like, I mean, the belief systems are, it's just absolutely corrupting. And, paganism, for example, lots of persecution of the feminine, once the sort of church patriarchs, went after, those with special gifts. And so even having a special gift was considered connection to the devil. And so people have to understand, be comfortable with your body, be comfortable with the gifts that you have. And, understand, like, there's a very sick darkness here that is manipulating you like you wouldn't believe, taking something that resonates enough with the truth and tweaking it just enough to completely throw you off. And, if pedophilia and having this stuff come to justice within the Vatican isn't enough for you, go on a deep soul journey, go on some sort of quest, go get into the energetics of what it means to be multidimensional and what it means to hold the divine blueprint of the very things you're worshiping. And, speak to people like me and you and listen to our shows and, understand that, like, I don't go to church. My church is the sky, the earth. Right. And my path is all about integrity and service to the human race. And, that's something that you might learn in your religious books. And so, but who needs the chains of dogma and the corruption to go along with it when we can free ourselves from it and live a divine path and still have the support and guidance we need, when we need it and call upon it. There are spiritual teachers and guides out there. So the most important thing I think is for people to get on the treadmill and exercise their intuition. The thing is, things atrophy like our intuition. And if we don't get the ball rolling and start to listen to our inner voice, it's going to almost be non-existent. And the thing is, when we start to get exercise, the muscle builds, and then all of a sudden it's like a huge part of who we are because it holds so much strength. So, you know, if you're lost with my words and lost with religion, you know, take a step back and trust yourself a little bit and get yourself on the intuition treadmill. Start to exercise that muscle of discernment and hearing your own inner voice. Let it guide you, and more than likely it's going to put you on a path that helps you to run into all the right people to give you the revelations and epiphanies you need. But, you know, if you know, don't see it for what it is, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like maybe a huge part of my reading should be like, you know, therapy to help people recover from religion. I mean, I think Jimmy Page, you know, there's a T-shirt, I'm a recovering, you know, Catholic. You know, it's a system that needs, I mean, and it's sad and difficult because there's so many well-intentioned people, you know, that really feel like they're doing the right thing. You know, but it's like, trust yourself, step away from it all. If you're so afraid that you're going to sin without the guidance of the Catholic Church, you know,
well,
I have to tell you, you need some help, and it's not shameful. I mean, I needed help to get through addictions in my life. Catholicism wasn't one of them, but I mean, we all have our stuff.
Well, especially, right, exactly, and very well put, I might add, thank you. And sin means nothing more than mistake anyway, all right? And
it's correction back to balance.
Yeah, right. Now, getting back into the religious ceremony, and that's what it is, a ceremony. Creepy crap, really. But I come from a day when my mother says, do you remember your kindergarten teacher? And I even remember her name. Her name was Mrs. Staten. She forced me to write and draw with my right hand because I was a southpaw, right? I was lefty. And back then, that was still, and this was the early 70s, that was still a sign of Beelzebub. I am the left hand, you know, and it's just like, really? Come on. But, you know, I have to say that I do write and produce my artwork with my right hand now. I'm ambidextrous. I use both sides. But it's crazy. And as far as Christ goes, with looking at him being crucified, if in fact he did exist, of course, being crucified up on that cross, it's not because he died for the mistakes, aka sin, of people. He was put to death because he came down here with the message that you're getting out there, myself, others like ourselves are getting out there to the masses, but the powers that were back then said, hey buddy, this is our playground, you do as we say, or we're going to tack you up there. So that's basically what happened, in my personal humble opinion. And would he really want a religion created around him the way things are right now? It's just, it's so crazy.
Oh, God, it's so insulting. And, you know, I mean, he had a very extraordinary lifetime and incredible teachings and things that really help us to be on his level. And instead, we're keeping ourselves dumbed down. You know, I mean, if anything, the people that set up this scenario, you know, have sinned more in one day than we have in maybe 10 lifetimes. You know, it's just like, come on. I mean, we're talking pedophilia here, and here we are praying and going to confessionals with a worse criminal than, you know, maybe, you know, cussing at our grandmother, you know.
Right.
It's just, come on, like, you know, and people go there just flipping out over like the slightest mistake they make, and very likely they're talking to somebody who has done some huge amount of abuse. And obviously that priest is suffering on some level, or maybe the same thing was done to him. It's infected and infiltrated, and that place is not well.
Yeah, precisely. It is oozing with negativity and darkness, totally. All right. Now, you know, the video that you and I were on about, I even got some flack behind the scenes from friends of mine saying, you know, and they even brought you into it saying, how can you and Laura let yourselves be pulled into that? It was a fake video. And I'm like, well, even so, if it is fake, why fake a video to bring light to the attention of the pedophilia going on? Why fake a video? I mean, it was
just stupid. Done. And I loved how you were just, I mean, we were completely on the same page.
Yeah.
I was getting really fiery, and I just love what you said before. You came in like, you know, this sort of person, kind, and I came in the sweetest person, and I call this place a boot camp to become like a serious bitch. You know, because like I have a fire in me, and I'm not as nice as I used to be. My patience is, and maybe that's not a good thing, but it's like, there's a lot of fire running in me. But anyway,
Yeah.
I just love what you said. So yeah, why would they do that? It's like somebody coming out of leaving a night with a prostitute with their pants down and saying it's a hoax, and if I mean, okay, first of all, why create a hoax over something that's true? Because
Right.
it's not a hoax. The whole point is this is what these people do. So if anything, it helps us to see, like, okay, let's have our attention on the fact that this is what these people do, and how can there be a hoax? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, I mean, I'm trying to think of examples, but, if there's somebody who's known for, sleeping with prostitutes, like I said, if there's a hoax connected to him coming out of a whorehouse with his pants down, how can that be a hoax? I mean, or, somebody, with a heroin addiction that is well known for it, coming out, dropping a bunch of needles. How is that a hoax? It's like, basically where there's smoke, there's fire. And, unless it's something so radically different, like a setup targeting, and there's never been any reputation or stories written or testimony, then we might consider it. But we have something in 2014 where a 16-year-old boy said he was abused. There's rituals, there's testimony from Arizona Wilder about the royal family. Princess Diana has said something. So then we see, like, evidence. And what do? In the first couple hours, we call it a hoax. There's no investigation. And this person, how is it a hoax to fall almost to your life? Did he land on a trampoline that was set up? I mean, he has one sock on. He's naked. It's like, did the royal family set this up? And then what? Prince, what's his face, has a black eye the next day? And nobody's doing anything about this stuff.
One of my friends, she told me that it's out there as a hoax. It was a few French people that did it, and they all put it together to make it look like the person being filmed was actually climbing out of a window at Buckingham Palace. And I'm like, all right, that's great, but why the hell go to the effort when we already know all these things are going on? Why bother hoaxing something that...
And to me, the hoax is the false flag, because we're so distracted with the hoax part. It's like, so what about hoax or not hoax? The whole point is this stuff happens. Let's do something about that reality, and forget about Google Earth and what window looks different, because that to me is where the hoax is that we're being brought into, like, this comparison. Who knows who might have altered anything on the Google Earth page to just create this sort of, distraction. And yeah, you don't bust yourself with the very things that you're being called out on and create something. And nobody would have been able to get into the Buckingham Palace to pull something like that off. And who the hell can Photoshop something like that? Two people were standing on the street, and this was happening, like it was being witnessed. And, I want to see an expert in Photoshopping YouTube videos say something, instead of somebody who's just saying that the pictures are different between Google Earth and the actual Buckingham Palace. I want the Photoshop expert who can tell, when something's been altered. I don't know where that guy is or if he said anything, but...
Right, exactly. Yeah. So what if it is a hoax, or if it's an actual person trying to escape? Because to me, when I was looking at it, it looked like when he was climbing out of the window, he got to the first notch in where the sheets were tied together, and that's when he kind of turned around and looked down, and it almost looked like he let go, really. And I'm like, well, son of a bitch, check that out. But the thing is even if it was hoaxed, so what? It's happening. And we need people to get off their duffs to do something about this. People who are in positions of power. And speaking of which, let's kind of switch gears here a little bit. April 13th of last year, it was put out on YouTube. You did a radio show or a Skype interview with Alfred Lamont Weber, and you spoke about how our star families, our brethren out there, are coming here to assist those of us who were born behind enemy lines, right? To assist from the ground level, okay? But they're up there, and they're at war right now with the cabal, and apparently we have some heavy hitters up there on our side. But down here, we have those who have infiltrated world governments and things of that sort, and you spoke about that. From where exactly are you coming from on that situation? Are you saying that they have been infiltrated, and the governments have been infiltrated by negative entities, otherworlders, or both, those who want to do good and those who wanted to keep people dumb and subservient? What is going on with that invasion, if you will?
Well, there's more than one controller group. There's the Black Suns, and then the Sons of Belial, which connect with the Luciferian faction of the Anunnaki. The Black Suns are more satanic and more, I think they're more connected to the Leviathans, and those beings, were created specifically to, okay, there's so much drama connected to the original Atlantis and Lemuria sinking.
Yeah.
And when this new planetary body was formed, we were now dealing with, 12 tribes being seeded and root races that were called Atlantis and Lemuria, very different than the higher dimensional energies. And so when we collapsed into this lower density, there was a new human experiment, but all these other beings, sort of gravitated here to set up the artificial matrix, set up some very negative technologies. Later on, I'm not getting, if I were to, do all the details of the whole story, it'd be difficult.
Right,
and plus,
right.
There's always gray areas. I'm not saying I have it all figured out, but what I have seen is that the basic chronology is that after we sank into lower density, we're dealing with two controller groups that see this vulnerable humanity that is not able to possess its 12-strand DNA. We had that before, and when we sank into lower density, for us to sort of graduate back into the higher earth energies, we would, pick up our DNA codes over the course of time and ascend eventually. But we'd have to do it slowly and more gradually, basically to learn important lessons. And it's just that new scenario needed to come because the original plan didn't work out. And so anyway, so controller groups, started to set up a way to divert us from being able to achieve this. This is why there was the Second World War and the targeting of the Hebrews who held a specific code we needed. There's, we all carry codes that we need to share and that others need, and there's no real chosen one. We all carry something and we activate each other, but that was a genocide specifically to stunt our ability to move on and pick up a certain DNA coding. And there's deeper details, but there was a collaboration with the negative ET agenda with Aleister Crowley, Hitler, and Churchill. That was the original sort of negative ET agenda on sort of a physical government kind of level.
Right.
Aleister Crowley was groomed in Atlantean times, and I know a lot of people really like him and like his books and like his genius and his occult knowledge, and hey, keep what resonates and about him or whatever. But there is other stuff, that he was brought into that infected others that, created this negative ET agenda. And, it might have been an agreement that, was a part of the tree of good and evil because we agreed to this duality. We ate from the tree of knowledge. So, we can get pissed all we want at, who did it and what it's all about. But, we agreed to this in order for us to have the free will choices to advance ourselves or stay enslaved. Now, when we're dealing with something like the Anunnaki, who came in as factions of the Anunnaki, are part of the controller groups that have wanted to stunt our ability to ascend, that have set things in motion to affect us now in this window period we're in. That's why time travel and all sorts of things have been taking place to get in our way during this profound window time. And of course, the goddess energy and other things and other factors have been at play to protect us during this time and to ensure that nothing would, get in the way of, ascension. So Enki and Enlil had their different ideas about, humanity. The goddess had different ideas. She was the one that seeded the angelic human, and through the Ark of the Covenant, higher indigo crystal children were birthed into the earth density that was so low at that point that the earth, was on the brink of death. That's why these higher dimensional beings couldn't just come in the normal way. There needed to be like some level of assistance.
Right.
And, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but it is a human management thing. And when, I guess you could say, the lower creator gods look at us, there's an anger that's very ancient connected to the fact that every soul was given the spark of Sophia, which means that we all have the potential to advance ourselves beyond even the 12th strand that we had in the original Atlantis and Lemuria. A lot of the negative controller groups traded in their ability to reach a 12-strand DNA potential and are functioning at 10 and 11 strand and are sort of policing us from the lower fourth density and like even higher than that. Their goal is to sabotage the organic ascension timeline and to keep us on sort of the catastrophic timeline, to harvest us and keep us in fear. And basically, they're sticking to sort of what they did a long time ago, which is they're wanting to just be in control. They've unplugged from source and spirit. They need us to feed off of. And we see extraterrestrials connected to these sort of archetypal characters like Enki and Enlil that are under that rulership and have to do abductions to save their dying race and use technology to have a certain sense of immortality. But a lot of it, has to do with using, the 13 families and through multi-generational abuse, manipulate their DNA to hold the reptilian energy so that they could possess it. And basically they just want to play the role of the gods, and there's anger that, and jealousy that we have the ability to go beyond them. And so they want to just capture us and manipulate us so that we never understand our potential. And, that's why there's DNA manipulation. There's things that really affect us and can create, incredible damage. And the belief systems, we get everything from the false flags, the false authority structures, to being poisoned and sprayed. And then, these other timelines that are, the organic ascension timeline is about advancing our DNA and being able to transmute or alchemize a lot of these assaults and a lot of these attacks. Right. But I wouldn't say this was the divine plan. But, just like nature, that's wild, and it also knows how to self-correct and regain balance. I mean, the web of life is very ordered, but at the same time, nature is wild. So I think the divine plan is the same. It's wild, it self-corrects along the way. But then there's an order to it because of the human soul and how we are a mandala when we're unified. I mean, how do bands like Pink Floyd form? I mean, there's synchronicities that draw individuals together. How do we find, the loves of our lives or the karmic connections that we need to clear in order to proceed to the next level? I mean, the intelligence of nature knows exactly what it's doing. All these agendas are to stunt our ability to be in that natural flow. And they can redeem themselves through incarnating through certain lines that will help to restore them, but nothing can incarnate into their lines. They've blocked the ability to ever be healed as a species. That's part of the original rebellions, and that's when they put these technologies in place to affect the grids and the DNA, basically to stunt our ability to ever heal our DNA and have the masculine and feminine united again. And this is where our consciousness is having to push the envelope so that our DNA can respond to the breakthroughs we're having, because otherwise a lot of damage has been created on a deep DNA level.
Right. And it's also, I feel, with what I told you before the show, the work that La and I have been doing behind the scenes with getting rid of some real heavy nasties around this area. They are trying to pull apart those who have gone through their trials and tribulations. Case in point, La and myself, because, I was going through my life over there in the U.S., she was going through hers over here, both being initiated individually, and we, got to the point in life where it's like, all right, well, if we were meant to find someone, I guess, it'll happen. If not, oh well. We were both ready to just say, screw it, we're done, But the thing is, they don't want people getting together who are of like minds, like hearts, who have been through their initiation separately to come together as whole, masculine, feminine, what have you, in any way, shape, or form that comes in today. But in this case, is traditional male, traditional female, physically, right? Mm-hmm. I did tell you that we've had a lot of things above us and around us magically happening. We've had UFO sightings. Check this out. I was standing in the backyard when I was still smoking cigarettes, and it was during the summer of 2013. I took a puff, and I was looking southwest toward the little valley that we're in here, and all of a sudden I felt the presence of someone looking down at me over my left shoulder. I spun around to look up, and it was a cloud. And this cloud was looking down at me, and it was smirking. And I'm like, what the hell is that? The cloud was the face, the hair of, like, say, Odin, if you will, or a wizard, an old wizard. White, long hair, his face, mustache and beard, and he was smirking at me with the left side of his face. And I looked at him, and I'm like, this is very interesting, and I threw back at him telepathically, what the hell are you smirking at? And he smirked more, and I said, La, do me a favor, look up there and tell me what you see. I see an old wizardy looking guy, and he's smirking, and I'm like, oh wow, what's that about? You can feel the magic around you. Atlantean, Lemurian, I don't know for sure, but it's magical. Old magic, the real magic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And there's somebody named Brandon Michael Keys that posts all about, Hyperborea, in that particular area. And, I just think, you're just connecting with that energy and it's very real. And, if one is multidimensional or connected to, just being able to see, maybe not everybody would have been able to see that or view that, but, I feel, on some level, a lot still exists that, that operates in another dimension. If we, get past sort of time and space and just the way, we view reality, it's like, souls don't ever die or disappear, and, I think, what I'm getting is that this particular being is, in this higher dimensional energy still connected to, the land and
right.
And I'm actually, also seeing that there's something that a being like this could invite somebody into to, explore. It's almost like being invited into, the Agartha network, going into like, the Middle Earth, or one of the crystal cities. It's like,
or
I'm
just
Asgard
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, because it's, right, being invited, but it was just like, all right, I'm seeing this for a reason, and we still haven't figured that out yet, but an invitation, great. It's been winter up here, and I'm really aching to get back into nature, in all honesty, because I've been sitting in front of this computer day in, day out, all winter long, but I would like to get outside and start communing with nature again, the deep spirits and everything else, because we have seen so much, and so many cool things have been taking place. So we've run the gamut of all sorts of weird crap going on, but I still feel that we're going to prevail in however shape or form that happens, And then we're going to be going, okay, what do we do with the rest of our lives now? We're together. We've weathered all this storm. We've been through the crap. What are we going to do together? Would you be able to give any insight to that? Because there are many magical beings right now coming together, like Law and I have, who have not told their stories at all. But there are couples coming together right now who I feel like are supposed to be coming together and to be, I guess, the only right in a world gone so wrong. You know what I mean? You know where I'm trying to go with this?
Of course. Yeah, I've been writing about this my whole life, just sacred union and how...
Right.
That's why I call myself a global alchemist. It's like we're changing things on the inside, We're creating alchemical marriage with that, partner that shows up in front of us and, has, those past life agreements and connections and higher dimensional experiences and, and then that's, maybe that illusion of separation from them, put us in the deepest of despair and then, the joy of reunion and then just what that shifts in this reality. It's like, creation is a love story. We're dealing with, Sophia coming in from the pleroma and, Christ coming in to assist her. And as much as these stories have been distorted, there was sort of a false stepfather or, negative male energy. And then, the reunion happens within us when we find that true love, when we drop, relating to those that aren't healthy for us, when we, stop the negative patterning. And so when the reunions happen and it's like, on a core level connected to our soul and our spirit. And it's, got that soulmate or sort of twin flame element to it. There's nothing greater that shifts this planet. And I think my book was called The Grail of Venus, Chronicles from Hell and the Quest to Unite Heaven and Earth. And it was, it wasn't that long. And then it was basically all about sacred union, but really, everything about my life from the time I was young was about this and how this would change our physical reality. And, in ancient mythology, they understood that certain unions would heal the land and restore the earth. And so my focus has always been on that. And there are a lot of couples, that are going to come together that are going to be doing that. The Hyros Gamos ritual was all about this. It's sort of like what's going on inside of us too. We always have to find it first within us for it to really show up outside of us. And, And it connects us with the core sun of this earth, which is seated as an ascension planet. It connects us with the grand central sun and, the portal that's taking us, straight to source. And, it helps us to move these energies. It's like, the Milky Way galaxy is somewhat of a fallen system. I mean, it doesn't have to have a negative connotation, but, this alignment with the galactic plane is also our reunion with the Andromeda galaxy. And in a sense, that's a form of, reunion. And so it's very natural for us to tune into these energies and just, be guided by it. And that's the biggest threat to them. That's why couples are targeted unbelievably. That's why my partner and I had to step away from each other, because the assaults and the attacks were too much. And, and so they don't want any of that. They don't want our unity. They don't want sacred union. And that's why these technologies were put in place. But yes, it's a huge deal. And a lot of the charts I read, I can just see a person that hasn't manifested it yet. And I'm like, oh, you signed up for one of these kind. And, and that agreement with that mate, is right there in their south node. And their north node is all about creating that sacred union. And, it's beautiful to see, people's charts really reveal this. My chart's all about it. I'm a Libra, all about, the balance and relationship, and it's next to, just the way it's all set up is, very much all about this. And I would say it's my priority. There's a lot about educating people about, different hidden agendas, but the real true mission is sacred union, returning the balance of the masculine and feminine, and living the path and walking the path and inspiring people to wake up to that divine inheritance and to the fact that, we're all, deep down, we're wired to do this. And we might have to, have a life or two of deprogramming or going through lessons to get back to it. And that's fine. But that's where we're heading. And you can only delay the inevitable. We'll all eventually get there. But, all these other tactics only really delay us. Eventually, the wisdom of spirit, is going to permeate the ego even and the consciousness of an individual. And the thing is, even if it means that humans digress into grays and are a part of, the abduction scenarios, down the road on the timelines, those beings awaken. And that's why there's these hybridization programs. And it's hard to turn it down. It's hard to know what we should agree to and not agree to. I think, our governments have been challenged. At least the few that are benevolent within our governments have not really known what to do. I mean, that was Eisenhower's issue. But now it's like, Roosevelt was the first to sign the treaty with the Greys as far as the government is concerned. Truman set up the three-letter organizations, and Eisenhower was already in the thick of it. And they called it a surrender, not a treaty. And so, we're able to, kind of look at the larger picture and recognize that, this huge organism we're on requires the balance of the masculine and feminine. And when we achieve this, or at least enough of it, it's going to create the magical child in the heaven, the higher dimensional existence again, just like we create the magical child energy and the miracle vibration when our masculine and feminine is balanced. That's how the larger picture is. Yeah. And us being in balance with our negative ego is exactly the same as what the planetary body is going through with its imbalance of the masculine and feminine, and how the parasitic rulers are kind of running the show, just like disease runs the show when we're out of balance in our physical body. So we have to understand the inner relationship and the fact that the laws of the physical body are no different than the planetary, but, we're multidimensional, and, we got to step out of the box.
I do have a big favor to ask of you. Would you mind taking a look at our natal charts at all to us, give us a little more insight as to where you feel and or your guides feel that we're going to be heading next?
Yeah, definitely send it along for sure.
All right, cool. Thank you. And how much more time do you have, by the way?
I do have a day filled with sessions, and I have one coming up in about 7 minutes.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to have to let you go then.
Well, it's amazing to chat with you, and I just
you too.
Love the flow, and I look forward to seeing your charts. I'll get back to you about that, and thanks for having me on, and thanks everybody for, showing up.
Thank you so much for being here today, and we have to do this again because we are in those times now to where I feel a huge urgency. You feel the same. Many of us do out there, and it's time to connect the dots, come together, and assist for the betterment of all down here.
Oh, totally. And thanks for all that you do. You're awesome. Yeah, and much love to your woman from me.
Thank you. All right. You have a good one.
You too.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.